The title of my talk, I have to go back, I suppose, so you can see that comma. The comma is important. The title of my talk is Learning, Time, and the River. If you leave out the first comma, commas are so important, they're so small, and they have a terrific effect on meaning. If you leave out that first comma, we'll be learning about two different things, time and the river. If you put the first comma in, we'll be talking about the interrelationships among three things, learning, time, and the river. And of course, we wouldn't have the second comma at all if I didn't have this sort of outmoded dedication to the Oxford comma, that serial comma that comes before and in a line of three, right? This talk is really about learning, but it's a particular kind of learning. It's deep and responsive learning. This learning takes time, so we'll be talking about time also, and how we use time to revise and deepen our learning. And then it will be about rivers, because I find rivers to be a very helpful image and context for the discussion of learning. Now, for 10 years in my younger life, I spent the summers being a commercial river guide in the state of Oregon. So a lot of my best learning has taken place on a river. Sitting quietly in a raft or kayak, floating on these nice quiet pieces of river. You get lots of time to integrate ideas, to assimilate ideas, and you have time for the natural beauty of the world to affect your mind. In whitewater, different learning outcomes make themselves apparent. Yeah? My decision-making skills got exercised quite a bit in this job. I had to learn the skill of looking way downstream and right in front of me at the same time to be sure that I made the best choice of action. Also, as a commercial guide, my interpersonal skills, my ability to read and judge and help people were greatly expanded. I had to build camaraderie in a group. I learned how to support individuals in a situation where there was visible danger. And I had to make decisions knowing that my decisions might affect the well-being of others. These are capacities that I developed on the river, but they're transferable and translatable into many other kinds of situations, including my current job as an academic administrator. Sometimes you learn from mistakes. How do you learn a river? You learn a river by running it multiple times. You learn a river by running it in different seasons at different water levels, and the river changes over time. A flood can change the course of the river. Human development can change the way the shore looks. In all of these situations, we learn through iteration, we learn through repetition, we learn through time, and we learn through action. And we also discover that there's no learning without relearning. Now, what does all this talk about rivers have to do with 21st century higher education? Sometimes I think that higher education is in the same position I'm in here in Wild Sheep Rapids on the Snake River. We are facing a great deal of competition and change. We're facing competition I love this, yeah? Harvard, Princeton, Yield. This is how it feels sometimes. Higher education is facing competition from for-profit institutions, from publishing houses, from corporations, from digital pioneers, from angel investors. And also government and the public are asking for more accountability and more regulation of higher education. In this context, change is important if we're going to remain a viable industry, as they say, in the next millennium. 21st century learning takes place in a flood of information, and access is always on in the knowledge-intensive society. This is both good and bad. Sometimes it's very hard to find a deep and safe channel in a flood, yeah? On the other hand, the digital, global, complex, interactive learning environment which we find ourselves in offers us great richness, and we can learn to make connections we've never made before. So how do we build an education that will help us through all of this? You know what pointillism is, yeah? All those pictures made out of dots, you have to stand back a little bit to see what they actually are, yeah? In an environment where information is available openly and in different formats, learners have to make different patterns, and they learn to process information differently. In 2007, a Polish sociologist named Bauman wrote a wonderful essay called Liquid Modernity. It fits with my river metaphor, right? He talks about liquid modernity, and he argues that we're changing from a linear experience of time to a pointillistic experience of time. In other words, distinct moments rather than extended narratives become predominant. So how do we learn through time in a pointillistic environment? Yeah? How do learners process that flow of information? And what sort of educational structure is going to support that learning and thinking and meaning-making most effectively? You won't be able to read all the letters in that. But we find that today, higher education is really living in a confusing cloud of needs, demands, fears, aspirations. There are hundreds, I'm sure thousands, of experiments and plans being put forward. It doesn't matter whether you like edX or Coursera or the Khan Academy or MOOCs, yeah? There's an experiment for everybody's taste. This word cloud comes from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology Task Force report on the future of an MIT education. It contains the words and directions of many of the experiments that we are undertaking in higher education today. In order to make sense of this cloud of aspirations, we need to find things that will help us find a direction and a path. James Duderstadt, who is the president emeritus of the University of Michigan, again in 2007, it must have been a good year, he spoke about a meta-university that operates in a ubiquitous learning environment. He has a very utopian vision. He argues that the university will become a truly global entity, and that empowered by technology, it will be able to serve all of humankind. Now, I suspect we won't get all the way there, and I know we won't get there tomorrow. However, his vision really encourages us to think about experimentation and to try and build things within our current institutions that will work in that direction. There are 4 things that I think we should all be trying to create in our own institutions to help us be more relevant to the next millennium. First of all, increased flexibility. Secondly, open access learning materials. Thirdly, immersive learning contexts and environments. And finally, an active vision of education as a truly global enterprise. Increased flexibility, and I really mean for students and faculty alike, but increased flexibility does mean more choice for students. And this is not just choice about what courses you take. It's choice about the pacing, the direction, and the timing of your own education. Stanford University has been thinking a lot about the future of higher education. If you go to their website called Stanford 2025, you'll find that one of the scenarios they put forward is called the Open Loop University. In the Open Loop University, students sign up for 6 years of access to the university environment. But they can take those 6 years at any time, in any sequence, and in a variety of units. So there can be breaks for life, for travel, for family, or for work. Yeah? So you can come and go. This means that the university becomes home to a wide range of student age groups, of student learning types, of developmental stages. So it's a much more iterative, self-designed education that the student undergoes and engages with. We probably won't get all the way to the Open University any more than we will get to Duderstadt's completely global institution. Nonetheless, there are things that we can do in all of our institutions to increase flexibility, even in the most conventional institution. If we take advantage of altered academic calendars, if we look at the flipped classroom, if we design more flexible course structures, we'll be able to create some of that flexibility. Open access learning materials provide learners with the opportunity to extend their learning in time and space, and they also make it possible for learners everywhere to engage with the intellectual property and the learning materials of any campus. An example on our own campus would be the Digital Thoreau project. Digital Thoreau has an online fluid text version of Thoreau's Walden available to all readers. You can comment and dialogue about the text, and there are 7 versions of the novel present in this venue, in a social reading platform which surrounds the text. Also, the expert comments of Walter Harding, a Geneseo scholar, and of other scholars are made available. This is a great example of taking material that's been previously restricted and putting it into the public domain so that readers everywhere, learners everywhere, can help to use and develop the materials. Thirdly, immersive learning environments, probably not exactly in the river in this case, perhaps. A good example of immersive learning environments which take learners out of the classroom consistently into the community, into the work world, is our current, newly signed, actually, agreement with Letchworth State Park. We will be, when the new Nature Center opens in Letchworth State Park next year, we will be the educational partner for the park and that Nature Center. We will be engaging in internship opportunities, in field research, and in public programming with the park. This means that student learning is going to be research imbued, it's going to be publicly engaged, and it's going to be immersed in the natural environment. And finally, 21st century learning must become more global in the way it defines and frames issues and problems, and in the way it builds collaborative partnerships. Institutions need to reach past the student exchange and the study abroad model to internationalize their curricula and their research, and to broaden their partnerships with global institutions. Institutional and individual learning alike can come from deep global engagement. Deep intercultural learning is also possible if partners undertake to address significant global issues together, and if they build learning communities that span national and institutional boundaries. Now, I have to admit that this is one of Keith Walter's pictures, so you're getting a sort of iterative experience in this very evening. Open, immersive, iterative global education is absolutely essential if we're to have an educational platform that will work in the next 100 years. We live in a design now that's been working for us for several hundred years. It's time to refresh and reinvent. Like my learning on the river, iterative and immersing education can help you to attain deep and responsive learning through repetition, through contextual variation, and through experience that's enriched by reflection and by analysis. Open and global learning can help us to develop the globally engaged, globally informed, and socially responsible citizens that our world needs today. If we are looking beyond the horizon and trying to discern what qualities of mind will really be important in 25 years, we'll be able to find a deep and safe channel through the rather choppy waters of our educational rivers of today. If we are able to build that environment of learning, I believe that we will be able to create a more just, a more productive, and a more creative society together. If that's the result, then all of our efforts will be very well worth it. Thank you so much.